Hello and welcome to Pat O'Keefe's World of Curiosities. And tonight we have someone that I think you're really going to enjoy. Her name is Sydney Stewart, and she is many things. She is a spiritual advisor. She's the owner of a metaphysical shop in Kentucky. She's a high priestess, a channeler, and a psychic medium. I'm going to let her just tell you a little bit about herself. So, Sydney.
Yes, thank you. My name is Sydney Stewart. I am a high priestess. I own Spiritual So Simple. We're located in northeastern Kentucky. I do professional counseling for spiritual advising. I'm a psychic medium. I do channeling. I also do paranormal consulting, and we do work with that around the globe as well. I have a little bit of a broad background like we were talking about, so I'm happy to get into whatever you want to talk about.
All right. Well, I see that you're a channeler. So what do you channel? Do you channel spirits, entities, ETs? What do you channel?
Okay, so whenever I do channeling, deetic channeling, I prefer mediumship to channeling past loved ones, although they do and will push forward. It's more of a pseudo channel when it's past loved ones, I'm sure that it's similar for you as well whenever they speak. I can also do angelic channeling. It's really about where the comfortability is with the being as far as what I will or won't channel that way.
What's the most profound message or one of the most profound messages that you've ever received channeling like this?
That's a beautiful question. No one's ever asked me that before. I think one of the most beautiful messages that changed at least me on my path was a channel from Toth. And he is absolutely brilliant. And it was talking about how in the experience of being human, and we are spirits, of course, having a human experience, right? Not humans having a spiritual experience. He led me down this rabbit hole of, it was so much vision work along with what was actually being said. And I remember seeing these golden atoms, and they looked like flowers of life between each and every realm, between each and every single dimension. And it was the fabric that like weaves and holds the dimensions together. And whenever he was explaining this to me, it was absolutely beautiful. He talked about how there's no difference at all between seeing something visually or feeling it, seeing it even in 5D versus just having knowledge of it. All of it comes back to the source of remembering that there is no separation, and within that you can find all wisdom. And there is just this beautiful sea of consciousness where you can go and find all answers. And whenever he led me there, it was like a process of, days and days of downloads, but the initial channel was probably about 30 minutes long, 30, 40 minutes long. And he led me, there was another temple that was absolutely gorgeous. And going there, it was very, medical isn't the right term, but it was on a different level from like the medical and spiritual communities of today that are not as well bridged as they used to be, at least when he was showing me this vision. It was very much to be a spiritual practitioner and to be a doctor was one and the same. And there was so much wisdom there.
So having had these experiences, then this one is very close to your heart because, you touch energy that is full of wisdom and calming energy and opening the doors of knowledge. But have you ever contacted or had the misfortune of having it contact you where it was a negative energy? And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think the most dramatic for me kind of scenario with this was there was a gentleman who I used to work with a few states away who became one of our paranormal clients. And he actually had a ride-along with him that he said that he wanted to get rid of. And it became a situation after talking with him in the astral plane, not in the physical plane, because the words did not match up. This was something that was more willful than he tried to lead on in the physical world. And this had just come after a really big case that we worked over that was, I believe, in Zimbabwe. And a gentleman had been possessed by jinn And I know jinn are very rare. I had not seen any before this, but this gentleman, he had his family reached out on his behalf, and there were probably, I would say, like 20 or more stuffed inside of him. Whenever I have seen jinn, and it's been very few occasions, they work kind of like those Russian nesting dolls. Anytime there's one, it's like there's a nest of them that just get shoved in and shoved back. So that one was not pleasant, but this case was right after that really huge case in Zimbabwe. And talking with him, he swore up and down in the physical realm that he wanted rid of this. So I agreed that if he were willing to put his foot down and renegotiate his own contract in his own terms and make better choices, that we would help him get rid of this. And it was a very, very nasty fight because it was one of those situations where you know that this person is not truly wanting better for themselves. So every time that we would remove this entity, and even if it became an issue where it wasn't anything that truly broke cosmic law, because this wasn't something that just jumped in his body and decided to take a ride, right? This was something that he had agreed to, so it wasn't really a circumstance where it begot killing this entity or anything like that, because it was an agreed thing. So because he was floundering back and forth and wouldn't make up his mind, he just kind of left a doorway open it was almost like just a rotating door of he was always having more issues. And it got to the point where in the dream world, whenever I had approached him, he came up and he had this very towering figure behind him, and it was just trying to look imposing. And it's one of the only other times that I've seen a jinn, and the only time that I've seen a jinn like in the US. I haven't seen one here at all since then. And it probably looked around in scale like 12 feet tall. And I remember he like stood and its eyes glowed red behind him, and it started to fuse with him. And he revealed that he was trying to become something more. It was very much a like delusional ego problem that came from being connected to this thing for too long. And he revealed that he was hoping to become more than human, and he liked the feeling that it gave him. And in this dream state, this thing tried to push forward and assert some kind of dominance that it didn't have. And that did get nasty. Jinn are not the same like playbook as dealing with demonic entities at all. So that wasn't something I was as familiar dealing with. We didn't really get it taken care of, but I would say that was probably the most dramatic, just because I felt like I was still getting my feet steady in learning how to deal with jinn at all.
Do you think that that's human nature, though, wanting to become more than what we are? Because I'm just look at popular culture. When you look at the Marvel series of movies, everybody wants a superpower, right? And in a way, psychic mediums, people who channel, they do have another sense, it's like another power. I think it's not maybe the wanting to become more than human, but wanting to use, if you will, or to connect with something that's negative for them in order to do it. It's like the equivalent of a Christian writing their name in the book of the devil, right? Exactly. And the jinn fascinate me. I had a friend, she has passed, Rosemary Ellen Galley, and I do call her a friend. She wrote the foreword to my first book, but she said she truly thought that the jinn were, what we report as dark figures or shadow figures, right? She truly felt that was what the jinn were. I have no idea. And I really admire you, because one of the titles that you do have is a spiritual warrior, and that is, you gave an example of that just now. How did you know? How did you know you were meant to be a spiritual warrior?
The best way I can explain it is being thrown in the deep end of the pool and being told swim. For me, that felt kind of akin to my path in the spiritual warrior realm. I was very fortunate and very blessed to grow up with a very eclectic background. My grandfather was a card-carrying member of the Cherokee Nation. And so none of my family really had that kind of constriction on spirituality that we often have, like here in this area. And I was raised fully to connect to the earth, to appease and work with spirits of the land that were positive, and how to, even working with the spirits of plants and herbs, everything had a purpose. So connecting spiritually and metaphysically was never like a new thing for me. But whenever I started exploring more of the gifts that I had in the psychic realm, with that came the paranormal realm almost hand in hand. There was not like a slow integration. I had very, very fresh feet in my first interaction with this, where I was able to do something about it. Whenever I was younger, I would still have experiences, of course, of seeing past loved ones or even darker entities, unfortunately. But I would say I was in my late high school years whenever I started experiencing, where I had lived at the time, some really, really dark energy. And this was an old Victorian house that, I mean, still had lead paint on the windows. it was an older house, and it had a dirt floor basement, and then we had a ground floor, the main floor, and then the attic. And I lived in the attic, and there was this solid like brick like structure. It wasn't quite a chimney, I don't think, but it went straight from the attic all the way through, like down into the basement. And anytime I would go near this exposed brick, it was like that feeling, something watching you, of feeling your skin like trying to turn itself into leather, of just feeling like you have to be on edge, not sleeping well. And this became a thing where I was like, obviously things aren't great. I'm going to explore this and see what I need to do. And that was whenever I started a mentorship with one of my very dear older mentors, who's absolutely profound and wonderful. And she actually used to be in the same event circles as Lorraine and Ed Warren, and does a lot of the demonology exorcisms, that kind of path that I didn't think that I would be doing. But the universe had other plans. And so my first time really tapping into that energy in a way where I could identify it, I was able to start learning to classify, all right, this is demonic. This is just, we call them like Death Eater entities. And those are things that just kind of show up when things have died or when people are passing, and they feel really nasty. And you learn like this discernment of, okay, this is just something that helps remove the rest of that emotional baggage before somebody passes on fully. These things do not feed on living people. Totally different than something that is demonic, or like an angry ghost, or somebody who is abusive in life and so then they're abusive in death. You learn how to categorize all of these different things. And so I was kind of in that realm, starting to even connect with different beings, more so like, this is what the energy of banshees feel like. This is fae. These are dragon energy. So it was very much like world opening very quickly. Back to my home, I was able to sort out, this was a demonic energy. It was, in retrospect, it was a weak demonic energy. But at the time, it felt really big. I was very new to it. And as far as its classification, I know now that it was about a level 3 fear demon. And those are known to try to take shape, try to like instigate, try to isolate you, anything to try to cause a buildup of that emotion that they can feed on. And because it was part of my path to learn how to clear things out for others eventually, and myself, I was blessed with the experience of, regardless of who removed this from my house, I kept having this problem until I learned how to do it for myself. So then it became, and I know everyone's very different. There are different approaches. I have a friend, his name is Don Giles in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. he is absolutely wonderful, and he approaches exorcisms and cleansings from more of a Catholic perspective or a shamanistic perspective at times. And the way that I learned with my mentor, it's very astral a lot of the time. A lot of the time, if we reach for something like a pile of herbs or we start burning something, it's kind of like something that just brings comfort to people who otherwise feel like the job isn't done. But what we're actually doing takes place on the astral plane. And I learned you armor up, you go into training. There were times where, 6 months at a time, I would wake up feeling like I had been hit by a bus, bruises, but I would also wake up knowing how to defend myself more. I would be in training with my spirit guides. I would be in training with other allies I had met on the astral realm for learning how to take something out or discern what something is, or even learn how to check contracts and learn if something is within universal law, within its right to be doing something, is a balance player and will leave if told to leave, versus if something is more of a trickster and says it'll leave and won't leave. So that was my intro, was just being thrown into it in that way.
All right. All right. And have you ever been in a circumstance where you felt a little uncomfortable?
For sure.
Yeah. What comes besides the one in Zimbabwe? What comes to mind as far as an experience?
For me, I've gotten very comfortable, even if there is something that is, and this is not from a place of ego, but regardless of what you face, big, bad, terrible, whatever it is, my personal belief is you will never be brought to handle a situation that you cannot handle. And so I've never had that once I was able to find that confidence and trust that I've been trained the ways that I need to for my jobs, for the jobs that I am here to do. Very early on, one of the most unsettling things, I can give a couple examples. One was my first interaction with a banshee. And this was still when I was doing a lot of training on the astral realm. And this, I haven't experienced very many at all. This was one of the only ones. But when this banshee showed up, I kept seeing her, and it was picturesque. Like, she had dark, like almost black hair that went all the way probably to her low rib cage. She had this white gown on, and her eyes looked like pooling black, like just voids, like there was nothing there. And she just started screaming. And I was at a friend's house at the time whenever I saw that, and I turned to them and I was like, hey, they were also very spiritual people. They had been on their own path for, I think, maybe 8 or 10 years. So I turned to them and I was like, hey, do you guys hear that coming from your living room? Coming from your living room? We were out on their porch, and they were like, hear what? And then I saw one of them close their eyes, and they went, oh. And they weren't able to remove it, so they were like, hey, I think maybe you're supposed to remove this, and that's why you saw it first. And I was, again, very green, so I was like, okay, that makes sense. Didn't do any kind of checking beforehand of, is this something I need to do? I just was like, oh, that sounds right. These are people who are technically elders to me. So I, to the jump, went in way too early, and I removed her. That was not what was needed. She was there to give me a heads up of what was going on. And the uncomfortability that I felt after that was so like skin crawling. Right. I could not place why it was as it was. So eventually I went back to my mentor, my private mentor, and I told her what was happening. And she kind of looked at me and she was like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. And they were able to show me how to deal with this kind of situation. And her husband actually resurrected this banshee energy and moved her far away. And I think that she'll be there until she cools off. Hopefully a long time from now, or hopefully she's given me more grace. But I would say that time was very uncomfortable, but it was a learning experience that I absolutely needed.
And And let me mention too, for those that don't know, a banshee is, she usually is someone who gives warnings, and she is often and usually a relative that has stayed with the family, and that she has decided to attach rather than cross over. Now that is one form of her, and she is there and she screams right before someone is going to die. That is what she's known for within the family that this banshee belongs to, if you will. So, do you have anything to add to that? Because you're the one that was working with her. For those that don't know what a banshee is, we just need to kind of fill them in a bit.
Yeah, my experience with this banshee, she didn't feel very familial for me, but that isn't to say that she wasn't familial to somebody else and
Mm-hmm.
just was showing up to aid me. She felt very much Celtic energy.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that. Um, and I remember that she was pointing at someone. And this actually did prelude an event that happened within that very house. Um, to another person that was not me, but she was giving me a heads up as somebody who didn't know the whole situation that was there, to be on guard and to make sure that I am keeping myself safe. And every other experience I've ever had with banshees has been not very many, but it's been very positive.
Yeah. I mean, they are frightening. I mean, because they scream. And like you said, your first interaction, she's in your face and she's screaming. But they really are there just to, in most cases, just to give a heads up that something is about to occur, usually a death in the family. So, what was the second one? The second.
Yeah, the second kind of more uncomfortable
Mm.
experience that I had more early on was learning how to interact with people who have a little bit more of a predator drive in their spiritual DNA and anatomy. And not necessarily talking about spirit totems. So whenever I'm talking spirit totems, we look at our spirit, our actual, like our spirit animal, our feminine, our masculine spirit animals, our messengers up to 4, and whatever we call in. When I say our spiritual DNA, there's also 2 above that come in through a golden and silver helix that flow in from above your spirit animal. And this is for people who have really, really high, you could say really high frequency, or who have lived like very potent past lives. A lot of times, these people have lived past lives or future lives, right, that are not human. So they may have lived a life in the Fey realm. They may have lived a life as another kind of entity. And that is a blessing that they then carry forward in their DNA that's latent. And then when they go through the spiritual awakening, that DNA, for all, like it comes back alive and it reactivates itself, and that's something you can tap into. Um, there are some that are a little bit more shady than others. One very common, everybody knows the energetic vampires. Everybody knows the sanguine vampires. I think one of the first times I saw a siren, like a true human incarnate, that was one of her uh, blessed energies that she carried with her. One of the things that stuck out to me was I had never seen her without glamour. Like you could just, I don't know for other people, but whenever I saw her, you could see glamour coming out from her from about a foot away on all sides. And it was when we had talked about it, I came and I asked her, I was like, hey, is this something that you do? Like, are you doing glamour magic? I think that's really cool. Is this something that you like naturally exude? And she actually then did share with me the knowledge that that was something that she had experienced, and she remembered living that. And that was very cool. But it definitely is not what people would expect, I guess. Um, Siren energy, I've noticed, coincides a lot with people who have reverse empath gifts. So, not necessarily somebody who is empathic and feels other people's emotions, but the more rare reverse empath. So, when they feel an emotion, they push it, and everybody else is way more likely to feel that. That is very connected, I believe.
Well, what advice do you have to anyone who's thinking about the spiritual warrior path? What tips or tricks or just advice that you can give them?
My best advice is make sure that your ego stays at the door. There's always somebody who wants to be the big dog. There is always somebody who feels like they know everything. And there's always somebody who thinks that because they trained with a certain person, or because they've been in this for so many years, or because whatever it is, right? They think that they are the best in the world at it. And maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's what gives them confidence, is to truly.
Wait a minute, I got to tell you, we call those people name droppers. Whether you're working corporate, I know the CEO, we play golf, or if you're in the paranormal, I knew them. I was actually on their team. You see what I'm saying? It's that name dropping, and you're right. It's like, energetically, they think that they're going to pull whatever charisma or whatever, validity that someone had built up onto themselves by associations. And I always tell people, beware of that. Beware of that. I'm going to tell you a little short story. I had a beautiful little girl. I swear she's about 19, 20 years old, maybe a little older. When you get to be my age, everybody looks young. So anyway, maybe mid-20s. I'll give her that. So she's sitting there, and she told me, she said, I want to be a medium. And the energy was not there. There is a certain energy that mediums have. It's a little darker. It is. It's not that they are dark. It's that they're more comfortable in the darkness, where others panic because they can't see, right? There's just that energy. So she sits down. I knew she was gifted, but this was not her gift. And so she told me that I had just flown to California, and I studied with so-and-so, and then I'm going to study next month with so-and-so. And I said, you need to quit this. You need to quit this. You want something that you are not a fit for, and I am not the one that wants to put you off track. But I want you to give yourself a little more time and to be truthful with yourself as you travel this path, to see if it is a good fit for you, or is it that you're being influenced by popular culture. At the time, it was very, very popular. And I said, you are extremely talented. You have yet to connect with that talent, right? And I'm a big believer in telling people the truth rather than sugarcoating.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so you have such a background, and I want to be able to transition now because there's just so much. Now, you're a high priestess. What path did you study?
So my mentor, she had a full upbringing in Wicca, as well as in Northern shamanism. Mm-hmm. And then privately, I also have an more astral path, but that is more spirit initiated instead of lineage initiated.
From one psychic medium, and I always say psychic and medium because I know you have to be psychic to be a medium, but in some cases like ours, we are psychic and we're medium. We see different realms. We see the future. We see your past. I mean, it's different than the mediumship part of it, which for those of you who don't know, the mediumship part is where we talk with those who've crossed over. And like you, I'm a channeler. So it's really interesting. And I know this happens to you. You get the message and you speak it or write it the very same moment that everybody else sees it or hears it, from the pen. And it's disconcerting. It's disconcerting to stand there and tell somebody which happened that they were going to expire. And the thing is, I wanted to save this particular person. I didn't want to give this message. And so I was reading auras, and I told him, see, all I saw was black around him, almost a solid black aura, just a little gray. That was it. And I'm like tap dancing all over that room. It's public reading. And he said, little miss, I said, oh, I see dark blue with you, and started doing the tap dance. And he said, little miss, that doesn't sound like me. I love this man, and I know he went to a very good place. I tried to save him, but let me tell you what happened. I was channeled at that moment. They said it's like a robot kind of thing because you're being taken over. You have no control over your body. And I looked at him and I said, I'm sorry, but you're going to die. And he looked at me and he jumped up. He was so happy. He hit his chest like this. He said, Little miss, they told me I had 3 months to live. I heard Spirit say less. He has less. And I said, is there any message for him? And it was like angels don't just have big discussions, or at least mine never have that I've connected with, because they're soldiers. I get a message. That's it. The message has been delivered, and once that message is delivered, it's not like they rephrase it or that's the message. And so, well, let me tell you, yeah, afterwards, he came running over to me, the little guy that, I told him that he was going to expire. He comes running over to me. He said, Little miss, he said, I came here tonight for hope. And he said, and you gave me that hope. And from then on, I was pretty young then. From then on, I don't care what the message is. I give that message, period. And I admire you for being a spiritual warrior. I wanted to be one very badly when I was younger. And I went to Spirit and I said, am I destined? Am I supposed to be a spiritual warrior? And I heard as clear as a bell, you are a messenger. And the only time I ever tried to put my spiritual warrior wings on, I would have had myself in a real pickle if I had not had otherworldly help. Um, yeah, and that's the one piece of advice I give to people who are new to this. Do not go running into that good night. Make sure that you develop relationships with the astral, with the astral plane, if that's what you're connecting to, with spirits on that, with angels, with whatever, with the ancestors, because many people that start with, those types of energies, ancestral spirits as they travel the path and as they gain more frequency, if you will, as they travel the path, then as their frequency rises, then they will get additional help, if you will, additional. I always called them guards, and because they're called spirit guardians or spirit guides. So, all right. And what about you? What's the advice you could give to someone new to the path?
New, I would say you have time. You don't, similar to your message, truly, because I think that's what you see when you're in this line of work the most, is you see people who are very gung-ho and very excited, and it's so refreshing to see that, because sometimes you get in it and you're like, oh, this fresh excitement, I love, you love to see it. um, I would say you have time to learn. Vet the people. If you are initiating or learning from different people, I would say vet the people that you're learning from. Make sure that you are learning from somebody who is of a similar moral compass to you, because you may find yourself in a situation where that's not the case and you may not be pulled to learn certain things from certain people. I would say learn up on how to recognize signs of more cult like groups, because unfortunately that is a thing that happens in this area specifically. I've seen at least one thing kind of like that, or I had about 5 complaints of that, of people who have come to me and said that they've escaped that kind of situation. And so I just truly push, be safe, make sure you're taking care of yourself first, and trust your intuition on if you are truly supposed to be learning from someone. The other thing I would say is spirit initiation is also very, very valid, but do it safely. You don't have to learn from just one person either. You can learn from a myriad of others, and you can also learn what not to do by seeing somebody else stumble on their path. There is so much wisdom and information at every corner. Not everything is going to be like a massive download, but over time, everything is going to be just as important.
All right. Cindy, thank you so much. No, that's brilliant. It really is. You're right. Everybody wants to hurry this up. And that's one of the most common questions I get when I'm out and about at the conferences. And that is, Oh, why isn't this going faster? Well, it's not going faster, folks, because it's a journey, not a destination. You will learn until the day you leave this world. If this is the path that you are on, there's always something new that that will either happen, you'll experience, or that you'll learn in some other way. Sydney, thank you for being on tonight. You were a breath of fresh air. I've really enjoyed it. I'd love to have you on again sometime. And so we are going to finish up tonight. And don't forget, we appreciate everyone who is with us. So until next time, stay curious.